Namaste. Thank you again for being here. So I'm unboxing. Well, I'm not unboxing. That's a lie. I actually unboxed it. You know why? Because I wanted to read about the lovers and the various fables, myths, and actually true stories to kind of give you not a rundown on each one because I didn't go through all of them, but a couple that I think are pretty important that I wanted to share. So this is the box I got. And it's beautiful, really sturdy, as you can imagine, which you want. Velcro opening. And then, of course, I love how they always, well, most of the good tarot companies now set up the ribbon so that it just pops out. You're not digging in it. And this is the book. It's a very nice sized book, actually. And the pictures inside are in color. Okay. And it explains the lovers. There's an introduction. This is by Chris Walder. And Chris Walder is actually well known for her children's illustrations. I used to buy a lot of books from her, and I used to collect her books, actually for my son, fairy tales and stuff like that. She's an incredible illustrator. So that's the book. And then within, another surprise, a scroll. And this scroll has different ways to throw the cards, to lay out the cards. And so that's something you can use. And then where is the bloody ribbon? Oh, here it is. So that's going to lift out. And there's the actual tarot deck in this box. And in this box is a little book. So this is a portable deck if you want to make it that way. And so again, it's the Lover's Path Tarot. And it's based on some wonderful stories. So I'm going to go with the major arcana. I'm going to go through that. And we will go through them one by one. And then I'll do a quick review of, I'm trying to find all of them. All of the other ones that minor arcanas. And kind of give you an idea of what they look like. I will not go through all of them, because I want to kind of keep it a surprise for you, because if this is something you want to get, I want you to kind of have some ideas of some secrets that come to you, not know all the cards. Anyway, I'll probably edit that out. But anyway, so here is the back of the card. White edged, I know. I don't like white edged, but you know, it's not a killer for me. I wouldn't say they're glossy. I'd say they're semi-glossy. So I'm going to start reading them. This first one is Merlin, and there's something so magical and ethereal about Chris's art. It's pretty cool. And Merlin was tricked by Vivian. There's a story behind it that's pretty interesting, where she trapped him in what was it? An ice sculpture. So that's number one, magic. Wisdom. This is called Scheherazade, and I don't know if you guys know the story of the Scheherazade, the 1001 Nights, but this was about a Shah, or a king, who basically had his wife had left him, you know, for another man, and to survive, and he hated all women, so he would marry a woman for one night and then strangle her with a white silk scarf. And so Scheherazade obviously didn't want to die, knowing what had happened to all his brides. And so she sat for 1001 nights telling him stories. And she would leave them as cliffhangers so that she would survive. So she went through 1,000 sunsets and 1,001 sunsets and 1,001 sunrises, telling him these tales. And eventually, his anger against, I mean, he was a misogynist, let's face it, but his anger against women dissolved because of Scheherazade's great wisdom and compassion and love and fearlessness. She was not afraid of it. She had faith. So that's an incredible story. Then you've got Anthony and Cleopatra. Is that Anthony and Cleopatra? No, Caesar, which is surprising, because that surprised me, actually. I've got to be honest with you, because the way I've always looked at the story, Caesar was an ally. He was a necessary lover for power, whereas Anthony was for her. That was her real soulmate. So it was strange that they didn't put Anthony, but they chose Caesar. So that was kind of a bit of a, you know. Anyway, Isis and Osiris, pretty much all the world's religions have repurposed that story. Just saying. An idea to consider. And this is called, you know, I'm actually not showing you. This is called Love. Sorry. And Caesar and Cleopatra was called Fertility. Sorry about that. And if I missed on that one, no, I got you all covered. So there's that. And then there is, what is that? Let me look, because the writing is beautiful. The font is beautiful, but it's hard to really think. So this is Arthur and Guinevere, which is power. We all know that story. Well, if you don't, this was the story of Excalibur. Merlin was involved in this. And Guinevere had fallen in love with Lancelot before she ever met King Arthur. So, unfortunately, they were unfaithful. And the story goes that Arthur came upon them and dove Excalibur, the famous sword, in between them. When they awoke and saw the sword, not only did they know that King Arthur had caught them, but they felt incredible shame. Almost like there's this movie Excalibur, almost like, and there's that scene actually replicated from the legends, and it's almost like it's Adam and Eve realizing they're nude and realizing their shame. It's really interesting. So anyway, that's the story behind that, and it's called Power. And this is called Tradition. And this is Romeo and Juliet. Tradition. This is true soulmate stuff. And you know the story. This is Shakespeare wrote about Romeo and Juliet, both 14-year-old lovers from different warring factions, families, and their eventual suicide. This is called Desire. And this is Tristan and... what is it? Isolde. Tradition. This is called Desire. So this is an interesting story. I'm glad I actually read about it. This story is about, there was a king called Mark, and he had found a blonde hair, and he sent Tristan to find who owned that golden hair. And he found, Isolde thought that it was Tristan who she was going to be with. But in fact, when Tristan told her, no, I'm not the guy. I'm actually his proxy. You're going to marry the king. Isn't that cool? And she was like kind of pissed off. So long story short, her mother gave her a potion and said, this will make sure that your marriage is forever beautiful and happy. And for some reason, Isolde decided that this was a poison and she did not want to live and marry someone she'd never met. So she ended up giving Tristan, they shared a goblet of wine. She invited him and said, let's have some wine together before we continue on this journey to meet my future husband. And this poison wasn't poison. It was a very, very strong love potion. And they ended up falling madly, beyond words, passionately, lustfully in love with each other. So that's that story. And there's more to that story too, which you can look up. Contemplation, and this is with Abelard and Eloise. Now this, I remember this story actually. Abelard and Eloise. So Eloise was in a convent. She was a nun. I think she was the head nun. And Abelard was the head monk. And they wrote to each other such incredible love letters. Highly celebrated love letters. This is Fortune, and this is Dana, and what is that? I can't. Oh, and Zeus. Dana and Zeus. So this is beautiful. And as you know, Zeus was known to sometimes transform himself as a swan to go and seduce young women. Penelope and Odysseus. I don't know if you know the story of Penelope and Odysseus, but this is when Odysseus went into battle, and the Battle of Troy lasted, the siege lasted something like 40 years. And men wanted to marry her. She was very beautiful. And she kept weaving this carpet. And she said that she would make a choice to marry a man once the carpet was done, but she would unravel it and start all over again. And this frustrated the hell out of her suitors. They kind of knew she was playing them, but that's an interesting story too. And this is Justice. And this one is sacrifice. And this is Orpheus and Eurydice. And this particular image captures, this is kind of sad, actually very sad. So this is the story was a demigod, okay, is what I remember. And he loved this nymph called Eurydice. And Eurydice was walking in the lawn, you know, she was having a good time in the garden, and got bitten by a snake and died at the ankle, kind of like Achilles' heel. And she was sent to Hades. And Eurydice would not accept her death. He was so upset, he could not live without her. So he sang his way through Hades, through the river Styx. Everything parted, and he sang and played. And finally, he came across Persephone, who said, listen, I'm going to give you your wish. You will have Eurydice, but here's the deal. As you walk through Hades, you cannot turn and look at her, or else she will be dead forever. And so he finds Eurydice, and he's walking out with her, and she's like, she's not understanding why he won't look at her. And he can't tell her, but he's giving her loving words and saying, I love you. I'm so happy you're with me. And she's so sad. She's like, why won't you look at me? Why won't you look at me? Please look at me. And they're about to finish their final step onto the threshold out of Hades. And the pain in her voice is so heartbreaking that this is actually the image where it's capturing the moment where he turns to look at her before she dissolves into nothing. The Furies, which were energetic beings, I guess, or witches or whatever, as she disappeared and died, again, came down and tore from limb to limb. And one of the goddesses, I forgot her name, came down and basically took his bones. And in the other world, in the world of the gods, Eurydice and Orpheus were reunited forever. So you see these kinds of, this is like an interesting tarot deck. You don't see this so often. So here we have Persephone and Pluto under transformation. And the details, you can look at the little details. And there's something innocent and childlike in her art. And here we have balance with Venus and Vulcan. Balance. I don't know the story on that one. I wish I could tell you every story, but we'd be here for an hour. Okay, and then we have temptation with, let me look at this, Paolo and Francesca. And then we have oppression, Dido and Aeneas. Now, Queen Dido ended up being the queen of Carthage, the original queen that set up Carthage. And there's some amazing stories about her. And I don't know if you know Carthage or Carthaginian history, what they call Punician history. This would have been the queen descendant to Hannibal Barca, who conquered Rome on his elephants going through the Pyrenees. So this is Queen Dido, okay? And then we have Grace, and this is Dante and Beatrice. And Dante wrote the Divine Comedy, where Beatrice comes up. And this is the Renaissance period, and Beatrice was the love of his life. They never married. I think they were cousins or something, and she was his muse. He adored her, and she shows up in his poetry, and she shows up in the Divine Comedy, one of the greatest pieces of literature on the three levels of death, you know, purgatory, hell, and heaven. Illusion, and this is Ivan and Odette. I have no idea what this story is about, so I'll be looking forward to checking it out. This is Cupid and Psyche, called The Awakening. And that's a really cool story behind that one, which I don't think we have time to go over. This is Triumph, and this is with Dionysus and Ariadne. Dionysus is also known as Bacchus, the king of wine. And I didn't even know that there was a romantic story about him, this god, at all. And then finally, the last card is called Judgment, and it's Tanacer and Elizabeth. I had no idea, but I'm intrigued. This looks very much like a balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all the cups because the minor arcana, because we don't have a lot of time, but this is the Two of Cups to give you an idea. This is the Prince of Arrows. This is the Six of Coins or Pentacles. I absolutely adore how she represents everything. The King of Arrows, which would be swords. Of Cups. I just wanted to show one more of the cup. Let me see for staves. The Nine of Staves or Nine of Wands. This is the Prince of Staves or Prince of Wands or Knight of Wands. Prince of Coins, which is Pentacles, Knight of Pentacles. Queen of Coins. So as you can see, these are like amazing cards because there's so much mythology and you've got to learn them. I'm still learning them. I just got this a couple days ago, but I think they're definitely worth getting. This is hard to find. This box set is really hard to find. But you can get them on eBay or Amazon or what have you. You can get the actual, just the box, the little box set. Little book. I just want to make sure that you saw it. You see it's really tiny, but it's good to have, especially if you're traveling. When you're doing a love reading, I suggest that you do it for yourself for a while because you've got to like change gears. And what I did is I did a Celtic cross reading, and there were certain cards that were attracting me for some reason. And so what I did is I put the major arcana to my heart, and I asked, please explain. And then I used the major arcana as oracle cards and pulled out 3 cards for each section of my Celtic cross that I wanted more clarification. And then that's how I actually read the stories. And believe it or not, it gave me clarification. So there's many ways to use this particular deck as you're learning. It has nothing to do with the Rider-Waite, not really, on some levels. But the stories are so extraordinary. The illustrations are so soft and sweet and innocent that I highly recommend this set. Anyway, I hope this helped. Namaste. Number 4, Power. The complex legend of King Arthur and Guinevere and Queen Guinevere appears in various forms in British, Breton, and Roman history and folklore. Roots of their story can also be found in Celtic mythology, where the regions sometimes wear the immortal colors of god and goddess. The archetype of Arthur as once and future king of Britain lives today as an example of the enlightened use of power. Modern imagination are still captured by the ideal of Camelot, the utopian castle from which Arthur ruled. Arthur's life began humbly. Though he was born of Queen Igraine, wife of King Uther Pendragon, at the moment of his father's death, he was immediately taken from his mother by the magician Merlin to be raised in anonymity. In this way, Merlin protected the young monarch from the lords who battled to gain Uther's throne. As they squabbled amongst themselves, the land fell into ruin. When Merlin foretold of a king who would come to unite them all one day, none of the lords believed him or the magi signs he prophesied. Only one who would pull a magic sword out of an anvil would rule England by right. Years passed. As Arthur grew into manhood, he remained unaware of the royal fate before him. The day soon came when he encountered the sword in the stone. In need of a sword, Arthur easily pulled it out, thus claiming England as his own. Though many fought with the young king, in time all, questioning his rights to rule, were overcome. The arrival of King Arthur ushered in a golden age of England. He united warring factions by winning their fealty with his brave and responsible leadership. He gathered about him the best knights he could find, including the noble Lancelot du Lac, who many considered the greatest knight alive. He also decided to marry and start a family. From the first moment he saw her willowy form, Arthur loved Guinevere, the young daughter of King Leo de Grace of the North. Though Merlin warned him that another woman would bring him greater happiness, his heart was irrevocably set. It was loyal Lancelot whom Arthur trusted to present his suit to Lady Grace. However, as soon as Lancelot met Guinevere's eyes, they were possessed by a power greater than their loyalty to Arthur. Both struggled to control their emotions as Guinevere married Arthur. And so Arthur's power brought him the bride he yearned for, but it did not bring her love. Much as Guinevere respected her husband, it was Lancelot she desires. Try as she might, the tragic triangle of Arthur, Lancelot, and Guinevere were entrenched for the rest of their lives. It would lead to bitter unhappiness for all three. But even today, the illustrious beauty of King Arthur's reign lives on despite the sad queen who did not love him. Arthur and Guinevere are shown upon their thrones, surrounded by the glory that was Camelot. The tapestry hanging behind them reveals Lancelot, who is always in the queen's thoughts. The round table shows which no knight could sit higher or lower in status, reveals the ultimate goal of power, to create peace and harmony. Meaning, the ability to use power wisely, the awareness of one's power, meeting an authority figure or teacher who can help, responsibility towards others, the ability to lead and inspire, knowledge of how to create change without giving up important values or resorting to violence or deception. Reversed, its weak aspects, oppressed by another's power and authority, insecurity, loss of personal power, passive-aggressive, using power to manipulate others for personal gain. Number 7, grace. Love can inspire us towards grace, a state which can guide us to brilliance brighter than a starry sky. The love of the poet Dante for Beatrice is a perfect example of this wondrous experience. Born in Florence in 1265, the poet Dante wrote the Divine Comedy, an epic poem describing his vision of a journey through hell, purgatory, and heaven. Beatrice, a woman who also lived in Florence during his lifetime, appears within its pages as his guiding angel. Beatrice also is the subject of Dante's first book, La Vita Nuova, The New Life, which fully recounts his love for her and how she inspired his heart. Beatrice was 9 years old the first time Dante gazed upon her. He was slightly older. Her presence made such an impression that he felt as though his spirit had been infused with light. From that moment, Dante adored Beatrice above all others. Through the years, as they grew into adulthood, Dante sought to meet Beatrice, too overwhelmed with love to do nothing more than to stare at her. He noticed that Beatrice was so full of grace that any who saw her experienced happiness which could only be described through sighs. All this convinced Dante that Beatrice was truly an angel. Since he said nothing, Beatrice did not suspect Dante's love. She thought him dumb, with shyness, but her warm greetings never wavered, no matter how awkwardly Dante acted. When Beatrice turned 15, her parents arranged her marriage to a wealthy merchant. The first time Dante saw Beatrice after her wedding, she was accompanied by 2 of her bridesmaids as they walked along the Arno River in Florence. Overcome by the knowledge that she was now another's wife, Dante turned his face from Beatrice to hide his tears. Beatrice's bridesmaids misunderstood and thought the poet had insulted their mistress. They jeered at him as they led Beatrice away. That night, Dante retreated to his chamber in anguished shame. While he slept, a vision appeared to him in his dream, as the stars reached the 9th hour of the night. From a cloud, the hue of fire emerged, a godlike figure. This being, who identified himself as Amor, the spirit of love, held a woman who Dante recognized as Beatrice. Amor also held a heart, which he told Dante was the heart the poet had irrevocably given to Beatrice. Dante awoke from his dream resolved. His love for Beatrice would be no earthly passion to expire when they died. Instead, he would immortalize Beatrice with poems that would last forever. As their lives unfolded, Beatrice was honored by Dante's verses, as no woman had ever been. The poet's fame spread, and with it, the story of his love for Beatrice. Over the years, the story of Dante and Beatrice has inspired many to give their hearts just as completely. It reminds us that the grace love can bestow upon us is a gift dearer than the heavens. Dante's nocturnal vision of Amor is shown here, as the spirit of love embraces Beatrice. Flames swirl about them, as passionate as the emotions at play. The starry sky behind the figures suggests celestial forces at work, forces which will guide us in the right directions. Meaning, love which inspires us and inspires others, turning dreams into reality, awareness of goals, the belief in self-esteem to meet them, a visit from the muses, reasons to hope for the best, reversal, not following your bliss, insecurity, feeling of unworthiness, ignoring intuition, fear of acknowledging your dreams, or not reaching a goal. So, what I love about the actual explanation of Beatrice and Dante is twofold. One is the twin flame dynamics, which people have a hard time realizing. So, in the first level of it is he falls in love with Beatrice when he sees her. She's 9 years old, and definitely there's no sexuality to that. It's absolutely purity. It's absolutely two souls connecting, twin flames, and then unfortunately, the ego, the shame, the not able to tell her, the inability to feel like he could expose and be vulnerable. And I often tell my clients, this is the time to be in your heart. This is the time to say to the person you love that you love them. This is the time to be vulnerable and stand in your vulnerability and feel empowered and be surrounded by the flames of your truth. Be what may. Be what may. Because you see, he ended up turning this into the faraway troubadourian, the troubadour love, writing these love poems, which, by the way, began during that time in the what they call the Middle Ages, Dark Ages, I guess, where troubadours would write these amazing poems about women they loved from afar. No sex, nothing, just romantic love. Romantic love comes from that period. And so he was romantically, platonically, non-sexually in love with her. And the tragedy of this story is that he just never came forth. And this is still a problem with men. They still won't tell a woman, I love you. You're all I think about. You're all I want. I smell you. I taste you. And women end up getting kind of bitter and cynic, and they don't want to reach out. So in a way, Beatrice also kind of screwed up because she must have seen something in his eyes. So both of them were shy and filled with not looking like the fool. And the story of Arthur and Guinevere is the story of, in a way, selfishness. And it is. And the triangle of that destructive end result. And though what Arthur did was incredibly honorable in the way he treated his men with respect and equality, this was during the times of serfdom. This was the time when in many places in Europe you had what they call the droit du seigneur, the right of the Lord, where he could take the virginity of any girl that had just been married. Her first night wasn't going to be with her husband. Her first night was going to be with a man. So all of that he had ended. He had ended all of that in his rule. It was heaven. It was a utopian time in the history of Britain. But he couldn't see, or maybe ignored, the fact that this woman did not love him. And so therein lies the tragedy, because unfortunately Lancelot and Guinevere selfishly became lovers. At least that's the story I remember. So there's a lot to be said about these wonderful cards. I think you can't go wrong with them. They're an incredible investment. They add such layers and depth. Most of the reasons I get are about love, and it's about cheating, and it's about when we start, when we get married. Is he my soulmate? Is he my twin flame? And the truth is, many of these relationships are karmic relationships. Definitely soul family concepts, yes. But they're coming back together to be lovers, to work out and purge past sanskaras, impressions, and the best thing you can do to clear it up is to be in your integrity, in your truth, and to ask your soul what past lives you need to remember with this person so you can get a clarity into it before you launch into 20 to 30 years of your life. If it happens, it's karma. You had to go through that. So there's no wrong move, but I'm just saying. I will share a story with you guys next time. I just thought of this story, a personal story about love with actually a soulmate and how I didn't fall into the pit. But that'll be next time. All right. I hope this helped. I hope you enjoy the cards. Again, the Lover's Tarot Path. The Lover's, what is it called? The Lover's Path Tarot. Love this deck. Beautiful deck. Well worth it. Take care. Namaste. See you soon.